Yo, this is episode 27 of the Put On Podcast. D, what's good? How are you?
What's good, Cal? I'm doing all right. Excited to jump into it today. We're both wearing our forest green shirts for some reason. That's a
It's
coincidence.
cause
We didn't
it's
plan that.
cause fall is coming. That's why.
True. Yes, that's why.
I
Exactly.
also when I was saying I was thinking about the fact that when you and I first started, like, we met through work at Vayner, and one of, like, the first things we were doing was putting on that podcast that, you know,
Yeah.
and we were doing the recordings, remember, for the intro, and we were just going through different people in the company saying, like, yo, or what's good, and you were like, that yo has to be the intro to the
All right.
podcast. That's how I was thinking about that as we were doing this. But we're gonna start with again, my favorite segment, but half baked ideas. You said you got one. I'm gonna kick it to you first, and then I'll go. So
All
what's
right.
yours?
Mine is probably not going to be as good as yours because I know that you're very excited about yours, even though I don't know what it is. Okay, but mine is a little bit specific to like people my age and contemporaries. So I talked to you about this the other day about like country clubs, which are kind of when you get older,
I know what
cer-
I know what
certain
a country club
people
is.
join country clubs,
Yeah.
right? I don't belong to a country club, but I have a lot of friends that do, that have more money than me, whatever. And so the other day we got invited to a party by our friends, and we went, and it was like it was fun to like see a bunch of people, but then when like the party part of the night started to happen, it
Yeah.
was very underwhelming. There was like a
Okay.
band. They kind of played music like we were, like 70 years old, like it was just like, and then the party just kind of like fizzled out pretty quickly. And there were a bunch of people my age there that like were ready to kind of turn up.
Yeah. And it
And
wasn't that
so
bad.
it wasn't that vibe at all. And it got me to thinking, what if there was a club, and what I'm calling it is a country club, okay? That was no golf, no tennis. It is specifically meant for people around my age and they're like, 30s, 40s, 50s who want to go to a social club for the purposes of partying. So day parties, night parties, stays open late, and is not as stuffy, is really just like, okay, like every, whatever, let's call it every 2 weeks, there's just going to be a rager type party. It's going to be like, get the best DJs in the area, sometimes even like, fly popular, well-known DJs in, and let people my age kind of relive their glory days, because we still want to party. Like I was at a friend's, one of my closest friends' daughter's bat mitzvah this past week, and it was a rager and it was awesome and we had a great time.
Yeah.
It was a bat mitzvah, so it was like
Okay.
how much can you turn up? But we did. And it just made me think like, what if there was just a club that was specifically for people who just want to party that are, older? And I guess the last thing is like, I'm not advocating drug use or anything like that, but it would also not be super strict, like it would be conducive to partying for older people. It's a country club. That's the
Would
idea.
you pay it? Would it be similar to like you're thinking that model though, in the sense that you'd pay a monthly fee to be able to roll up to this spot and party on the weekends, kind of thing?
Yes, yes. It's I guess it's similar to the structure of how people pay for clubs now. And again, I don't belong to a club, so I don't really know what that is. But I just think it would be fun to have a club where
For
I
older
don't have
people.
to like trek into the city, and it's like it's just meant for like people that have fun and party, people my age, to be able to go out and have a good time and not have some like, stuffy bullshit party. Especially when you're paying a lot of money, like you want to have a good party. So that's the idea.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind it. I'm
Okay.
not there yet, but yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It's one of your better ones. Um,
What do you have? What's your $1 million, $1 billion half baked idea?
so my idea is coming from a place of, a bunch of young people nowadays. Everyone seems like they're traveling, right? Everyone wants to go to Southeast Asia, everyone wants to go to Europe, everyone wants to go to South America. They want to go to all these countries. But us in North America, typically some people speak other languages, whatever. I would say majority of like my friends, people I know, speak English and then one other language, but not very well. And so everyone could use this. I was thinking about the idea of having AirPod type, or like some sort of headphone, wireless headphones that are super small so that, you don't necessarily know that they're in, but some things that I wear in my ears. And when I'm in a different country, so I was just in Thailand. When I'm in Thailand, what it's doing is if someone is speaking to me in another language, my headphones or whatever they are picking that up. It's then speaking to me in English. So like whoever's saying whatever
Translating.
it's translating to me, and then I hear it and can speak out loud, and then they have speakers so that it can speak back in my voice back to whoever I'm talking to. So again, they're small enough that like you don't necessarily see. And so yeah, this idea of like some type of device you wear in your ears that translate language and speak back. Super sleek design. No one notices. You can pre-record your voice when you get them to set it up, and then it speaks back to whoever you're talking to, and it skips like the Google Translate. Here's my
Right.
phone, like all that back and forth. Sleek. I think it's a gold mine
Wait,
if
so just so what one after it translates it to you, you then speak back in English, and then it has some feature that will then uh,
out loud
speak
translate
out loud
back.
in the native language back to them.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, it's brilliant, dude. I love
I,
it.
I know it's a
All your
great idea,
ideas
no?
lately have been good. Yeah,
They've been
yeah.
good, eh? I was
Well, I
juiced
mean,
about it. I was juiced about it.
I like the idea that first part specifically of like somebody speaking to you. It's just translating
And you know what they're
instantly
saying.
into your ear, and you're hearing what they're saying. And yeah, then the second part of it of being able to communicate back is just as important. It's
I
it's
mean,
getting rid of all those steps that you're talking about of like trying to translate it through an app on your phone.
yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, we make this affordable for every single person, and you and me both. You're my taxi driver in wherever, you're wearing them as well. So I can speak back to you in English like me, and then you're hearing it. But for now, for the prototype, we got to have the feature where I speak and then it now has speakers that project to said person. But if we have the whole network on it, it's just a back and forth in native language, but I can hear them in. I think it's yeah. I need this as a clip. I want to get this out. I want to send it to the right funds, and I want to get this funded.
I like it. I will invest in that idea. I think it's a great idea because I'm very into trying to communicate with people that don't speak the same language, or just I like the idea of trying to connect with people that are like
Yeah,
foreign, right? And a lot of times when you're in a foreign country, you feel like you're an alien, like you
100%.
can't, there's nothing
It's
you could
tough.
do, right. But if you're able to communicate it, obviously levels the playing field and just makes it so much easier. Great idea, Cal.
Okay, so it lived up to the hype because I was like, "Yo, this is a good one." Like, I gotta.
That's not a half baked idea. That's a pretty fully baked idea. I like that idea a lot.
I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's mine for today. We'll bring it back. So next segment, let me put you on. I know you said you got a few things. I want to start with you with your podcast.
Okay. So I've had to like put a bunch of the different things I want to put you onto in like a queue. And I've told you this before we got on that I'm like losing them as we, sometimes have a guest on or like we haven't recorded for a while, but um listen to a couple good ones in the last few weeks. And so I'm just going to rattle off a few. The first one is, I think it's somebody I've spoken about on the pod before, but um, on Rick Rubin's Tetragrammaton
Yeah,
podcast, he had on this woman, Esther Perel, who's a very famous psychotherapist, renowned psychotherapist.
yeah, you talked
Um,
about it.
Yeah, she's known for her work on human relationships, and she just has like a lot of incredible insight on modern relationships and all the influences on human connection. And I think I love listening to her. I think she's from Antwerp. She's from
Yeah,
Belgium.
she's from Belgium.
You're right. She has a way of just getting around all the bullshit, and she speaks so honestly about such vulnerable topics. Um, that's something I just admire about her. And again, like she's just so candid about sex and intimacy and all of these things that are not like taboo, but that people obviously have a hard time talking about.
For sure.
And she's brilliant and just again so insightful. I highly recommend checking her out. I've listened to her on a
Is
bunch of
that a recent
podcasts
one?
before.
Is that a recent Rick Rubin pod?
It is, I believe it's semi recent. So that's the first one. Esther Perel, love her.
Okay.
um Second one, have you ever heard of a guy named Gad, I think his name is Gad Saad. Gad Saad.
Sounds familiar. I believe I've heard of him.
He was on Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, a recent
Yes.
episode. Gad Saad. He's an
He's Canadian.
evolutionary. Is he?
Yeah, he's Canadian. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard of him.
He's an evolutionary psychologist, and in this episode, they delve into research on human behavior, something that I'm very just like endlessly interested and fascinated in. Um, and he explores stuff about primal instincts and the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain, and how it kind of shapes decisions and in consumer behavior and relationships. Again, just like
Interesting.
a lot of stuff having to do with human biology and human behavior. It kind of
Technology.
There's a lot of stuff that kind of intersects with the Esther Perel podcast, but again, like anytime the topic is human behavior and how uh, people are influenced by different things, and all of these things that kind of get to the heart of, I guess, like science to some
Yeah.
extent,
Yeah.
I can't get enough of it. And so I'm not even finished with this episode, but I would say I'm 3/4 of the way through, and I'm like savoring each part of it. It's great. I would definitely
I
check
think it's a
that out.
great thing to be curious about in terms of like, especially recently from the conversations you and I have been having around books and podcasts and just consumer behavior. Like it's for you to be curious at this point and really dive in and double down on that sort of niche and the psychology and why individuals are the way they are and how they act the way they do and everything in between. I think that again, if you keep staying there and keep listening to more podcasts that are insightful and keep reading more on that, and it only benefits your life in a positive way, whether that is, financially, happiness, So yeah, that's dope that you're curious about those things specifically.
I think part of the reason I'm so curious about it is just whenever, and you said consumer behavior, but more so I'm talking about human behavior, even though there is some consumer behavior discussion. But in terms of human behavior, I think when you're able to listen to somebody speak about it in an objective way, then you're able to then think about your own behavior, and it almost, a lot of times it explains a lot of the things that you do that maybe you're not quite conscious of. And it makes you kind of reflective in some ways, right? You're like able to kind
Sure.
of understand why you operate in certain ways and why you have certain habits and routines. And so again, yeah, I think it's super beneficial to hear from people that work in these fields and kind of devote their entire lives to
To
these,
learning.
yeah, to these themes. The last podcast that I wanted to mention is I listen. When I want to listen to a lot of sports stuff, I listen to Bill Simmons. Is one of the guys I've listened
Yeah, I
to
love Bill.
forever. Recently, he had, or maybe not as recent, a couple of weeks ago, had on this guy Chuck Klosterman. Do you know who that is?
Mm,
So
no.
Klosterman is an author,
Okay.
really, really popular author, and he's known for kind of like his he does a lot of stuff on pop culture,
Sure.
and he is a really really interesting guy. The way his mind works is really interesting. But the reason that I bring him up was like it was great to hear him talk and like kind of push Bill Simmons into all these different topics of discussion that like he's not used to going into.
Yeah.
Klosterman is one of my idols. He is probably the first person that got me into reading. And it
Interesting.
all started with a book that I read of his called Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs.
Okay.
It was one, Cal, it's one of those books that like blew my mind when I think I was 20 years old when I read it. And it was
Okay.
like, oh, so books don't have to be written in this one way that I've been accustomed to my entire life of like mandatory reading in school. You could be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
wild and creative and kind of like go all on all different tangents. I read this book and I was like blown away. And he was the first author then after that book where I'm like, I got to read all of this guy's books. So I read like a book that he wrote called Fargo Rock City, and then Killing
Uh,
Yourself to Live, and then Eating the Dinosaur. I would highly, highly recommend if you've never read Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs, go check that out because it's really a brilliant piece of literature. It's really creative and again like it kind of opened my mind to the fact that books can be don't have to be written in one type of way. Like you could really
okay.
have all different types of styles of
Yeah.
writing. Big fan of his work, and so check out his pod, and you'll kind of get a sense of where his books can go just based on his personality and kind of how he is in the interview.
He's obviously a big sports fan as well. Hence the overlap with Bill.
Yeah, big sports fan, big into pop culture. He like I'm kind of the same way. We have similar sensibilities in that way where it's like we have a lot of interest and a lot of curiosities. And he's one of these guys that's so inquisitive that when he gets on, like he used to go on with Simmons all the time. He gets on, he almost like turns the interview around and is asking Simmons all the questions as opposed
No
to
shit.
Simmons asking him all the questions.
Okay.
Um, so I think you'll really enjoy it. Definitely check that out. And this is like some homework for you, but you got to read that book, Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs. Classic.
It's old then, huh?
It is old. I think it's from at least 20 years ago. At
Okay.
least it might have been
As old
even.
as me.
Yeah, I think it's at least 20 years ago.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Um, Bill Simmons is obviously a great podcaster as well. So shout out Bill Simmons. But I will let me throw a couple creators your way here. That was it for podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all the podcasts I had.
I got you. Um, so yeah, I've got two very different. The first one is just a feel good. I I I told you I love the cooking videos and shit, but like this guy came across my feed and I legit found myself going in and I watched probably 200 because they're just so short and it's just like such
Yeah.
quick bite and like I love them. And so he's got like 20 he's not low key. He's got like 27 mil followers, I think, but I've never seen him. His at is the Zach Choi. So Zach spelled like Zach and Choi Choi. And he does like these quick food videos where he'll make their ASMR and he'll make like whatever, like ginger beef, lasagna, whatever. But like the way he does it with the quick cuts with the camera and then like, crunching into it at the end and the way he slices everything and just like, bro, great angles, great cuts, quick vids, extremely satisfying. So D Zach Choi, if you need your food kick, you just like got to have him in the rotation of like, this is cool. So
I love food and ASMR, so
yeah, the
sounds like
combination
it's
of the two
right up my alley.
is amazing. And the other one is he's around my age. I've followed him for a few years now, but he's kind of transitioned in his content and he always been crushing. So shout out Alex Sedlak is his name, and his handles are like Alex Sedlak 1. It's Alex and then Sedlak 1. And so he does like, personal development, motivation, self-improvement. His content often like revolves around encouraging people to push themselves and, not follow the status quo, break through barriers. But it's, when I see certain people talking online about, motivation, discipline, breaking through barriers, they're normally older, in the sense that, like, later 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. I think the fact that, like, to me at least, he's very relatable. He seems like he could be my boy because he's like 23 as well. He is not, extremely politically correct, probably in some of his videos, like me as well. Like, I'd be in normal life. So it's refreshing having
Uh-huh.
seeing him, just speak his mind and put out the content that he puts out and like pushes people, because I know there's a bunch of people in his comments and all that who, lives have changed because of just what he's saying, but no one else who's young really is doing that and willing to push the envelope and be, a little politically incorrect, or however you want to put it. So yeah, he's just like very eye opening, and a good personal development content creator who's young. And I think he's got a bright future. So yeah, shout out Alex Sedlak and keep the content coming.
Question on Alex, is he, what's the like the format of his videos? Is it just like kind of talking to right to the
Talking to the
camera?
camera, green screen type vibes. He does some informational stuff too, like, like, hey, this food for like, just it came to mind, but like, all these foods are banned in all of Europe, but here's like, and then he'll like look at the FDA and be like, here are what's in them. I don't think they're good for you. Look at the, just like
Yeah,
breaking down certain things like that, as well as just talking into the camera. Um, so yeah, that's his vibe. And then like most, he just bought a Ferrari at 23. He's got a land, like, he's got the
right.
flashy stuff as well that comes with the I'm a young content creator with, a bunch of followers. So he's hitting all sorts of different people with his content, I would say. But
Okay, I'll check him out.
yeah, bro. Yeah, he's
Um,
good.
is that it on your creators? You got any more or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah, those are my two. You go.
Okay, so here are the guys, or I guess yeah, it's mostly guys that I'm going to put you onto for this, for my put ons for the creators. The first one is somebody kind of similar to the guy that you just mentioned. Okay, it's a handle called the Jaunt,
John.
Thejaunt.
Okay.
I tried looking for this guy's name. I can't find his name, right?
Okay.
Just some white guy, good looking guy, incredibly well spoken and articulate. And he hit my feed, and it's like he does the straight to camera style format, and just like spits like just like wisdom and fundamental truths about life and work and
Yeah,
relationships. There's some
that's awesome.
personal development stuff, right?
Okay.
he's he's one of these guys that it's like, we're doing this podcast and like we're figuring it out and we're getting better. This guy was like, this guy needs his own podcast. Like he's so smart, and he's got so many like valuable nuggets to just
I,
share.
I think if he's got so many valuable nuggets to share, he's got to come on here. You say he needs his own podcast. He needs to come
Oh,
on and put on
100%.
podcasts.
I would love to reach out to him and see if we could get him on. And I remember there was one point at which he was talking about just like content creation. And it seems like he quit his job in, I think it was finance. And because he thought like he could do this thing on with his content. And he kind of, the first month kind of started off slowly, but then he like started to realize he definitely has something and he had momentum. And, again, one of these guys where you'll watch a couple of his videos and you're like it's just like facts, like just yep, like he
Yeah.
he hits it on every single one. It's very impressive. Like the guy, whatever this guy wanted to do, or like if he wasn't doing content, he wanted to do finance. If he wanted to be a lawyer, whatever, like he'd be successful. He's one of those guys where like I can see him blowing up in short order.
is his content predominantly on like TikTok? Where's he is he on? Where's he at?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know if he's on Instagram, but I found him on TikTok. He's got a big
TikTok. Okay.
following on TikTok. Yeah, the
Shout out
Jaunt.
to John.
So
Yeah, I'm gonna
shout
check
out to
him out right
him.
after this.
Whatever that guy's actual name is, he's the truth. Okay, that's number one. Number two, um, I've came across these videos of this mentalist slash mind reader. You might have seen him. His name is Kevin Hamdan. Kevin Hamdan.
Okay.
Okay,
I
guy
think
with
I've seen him.
glasses. He's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a mentalist on the street. He goes up to somebody, he's talking to them, and he's asking them a bunch of questions, and then he'll be like, I want you to think about, a person from your life, whatever, like think about him. All right. Do you have that person's name? He's asking them a bunch of questions. He's telling them, okay, in your head, say that name. Then he writes it down, and then the person will be like, it'll be like the most
I actually
random
get it.
name, and the person will say it out loud, and then he'll show them what he wrote down, and it's just like he's able to read people's minds. It's crazy. It's
You
amazing.
you don't think that any of that I think that's amazing, and I don't know how individuals can do that. You don't think any of it's like, because it's recorded on the streets, like any of it's like, hey, you don't think so?
No, because I think there's some other mentalist that like goes to all the football camps now. I forget what his name is. Maybe like
Oh,
Oz or something like that,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I think there's really something there where there's some people that
Which is
have the
crazy.
ability. Yeah, and I don't know how, but like there's a lot of stuff I don't know how. And I think there's something very different. Like I think if you watch the videos, you can tell a genuine reaction from a non-genuine reaction, Like
True,
you could tell
true.
somebody who's just like, what the
Yeah,
fuck? Like
unless they're like the best actor in the world, which these people on the streets definitely
they're
aren't.
just
Yeah, that makes
random
sense.
people on the street. And so if you watch these videos every single time, it's pretty incredible.
That's
And so
dope.
I just wanted to throw that
Yeah,
guy out. All
I'll
right.
check him out.
Um, This guy I discovered very recently. His name is Mega, and the at is Mega American, and it's
American.
literally all this guy. Like maybe he's got other videos, but all the videos I see of his, he'll start a video from his face, just kind of being like this, and
Mhm.
then it plays this one song called "Me Gustas 2" by Manu
Yeah, I love that
Chao.
song. Me
Yeah,
gustas anime. Yeah.
yeah, and then the video pans and each one is to like the most incredible like landscape you've ever
Yo,
seen. You
hold
know
up.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, is he the transition king?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Look him up right. You can
There
look him up right now. Mega
what's his at?
Mega American. Mega American.
There's this guy who he was at like the Euros with like the CEO of IG, and like he was doing a bunch of content, and like he's the king of transitions, and it's like one of those where it'll be his face, and then he'll like pan to a cup of coffee, and then it'll be like this, like he'll zoom into the coffee and it'll be this crazy lens. It's not that guy.
I don't think it's that guy because this, I think, are actual places that he's
Different
at. Like
guy.
he's traveling to the most
Different guy.
incredible, he's like you could tell just when you're looking at his face that like just based off of the color
I
that you're
see.
about
Yeah,
to
yeah.
see like an incredible ocean paradise in some exotic country, or it's going to be a mountain range overlooking like some like valley, or it's going to be an incredible piece of architecture. And just every single time, it's like eye candy watching his videos.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm seeing his stuff. This is not this. You need if you like this guy, you need to. I'll find his ad and I'll put you on next time. You need to see the other guy too.
I think I know. I think I know who you're talking about. And again, by the way, just the power of the right song. Because like
Oh,
anytime
that's
you
not.
hear
Yeah.
this song, and it's just like and it has like this moment where it transitions to like a different part right in the beginning, and then you see this like beautiful sunset or like this ocean or this mountain, and it just hits every time. So Mega American, he's got a huge following. I'm not the only one that digs that
Yeah, he does.
content. The last one is, I'm a big animal guy, right?
Yeah.
And so I stumbled upon a page called uh, by a guy named Ruben Namibia at
Okay.
Ruben Namibia, and it I think Namibia is a country located in Africa, southern Africa. Okay, and basically this guy takes care of orphaned animals in Namibia, and
Namibia, Southern Africa.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so he has all of these animals that live together harmoniously, right? And it's like kind of not animals I'm accustomed to. They're warthogs and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
mongooses and they're meerkats, right? And so it's amazing watching them. But the undisputed star of all of his videos is this one baboon named Cindy the baboon, and she's old. She's like at the end of her life.
Yeah.
Um, but she has this hilarious personality. She's like so loving towards all the other animals, and she does this thing where she'll pick up the meerkats and like kind of like pick like the bugs off of
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Well, the only reason I'm saying, "Oh, yeah," like that is because, monkeys are such, like and baboons, whatever, different types of monkeys, are such fascinating animals to watch. Like, when I was in Thailand and Indonesia recently, we went to the monkey forest, we went to Monkey Beach, like, went to and, yo, just seeing, like, you should ask Jules, like, how I was. I could stand there smiling for, like, an hour just watching monkeys, like, just interact in the wild, and, yeah, like, they throw each other on their backs and they'll like pick out like each other's like they smell the asses, like they're like dicking
yeah,
around with like
right.
it's so funny. Yeah, so I can
I know
imagine.
it's crazy. There was another clip I saw the other day, just on a side note of like these other monkeys that the ones that like run like this,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
like they
yeah,
run
with
up
their
in the
hands up.
street and somebody's holding like a thing of grapes and they're like eating them and then they like
It's
run off
crazy.
like this. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
and like the way they swing and whatever. Anyways, this one, Cindy the baboon, and like apparently the guy Ruben grew up with her like for years, so like they have such like a real special
Okay.
bond, and she like comes into his house every morning and she
No shit.
drinks a cup of tea, and like he feeds her, and again she's kind of at the end of her life, so like she's like slowed down, but she's such like a you could tell she's such a sweet soul.
Yeah,
And bro, animal content, like just
that's
I'm
dope.
such a sucker for animal content like this. I
That's
You gotta check it out,
that sounds
Ruben
super unique too.
Namibia.
Like who else is
Yeah,
in Nambia creating content with wild animals? Like who has
is
that?
it
Yeah,
Nambia? I just kept calling it Namibia. Why do it's
maybe it
you're
is
I think you're
Namibia.
right.
I think
No, I think you're right. I think it might be Nambia.
there is a country that is Nambia. I don't know if it's a different country than Namibia, but Nambia is a country. I think this is
If I
Nambia.
just did that, I've done this before where I pronounce a word completely wrong the entire time. I'm gonna be so mad at
W
myself.
I think it is Nambia. I know Nambia, but I don't know Namibia.
I think you're right. Hold on. Ruben. This is good. It okay. It's spelled
Ibia.
Namibia,
Yeah.
but maybe it is pronounced Namibia. Whatever the case, that's how it's spelling. So
Okay.
that's why I'm saying Namibia.
We'll see. It doesn't honestly. Yeah. I know. I'm gonna go check them out either way. However it's
Okay,
said.
so those are my creator put-ons. And then I have one last TV thing that I got to put you onto, and it's so I was listening to a podcast the other day of Joe Rogan, and he had Adam Sandler on, and he was on promoting his special. Adam Sandler was then on Bill Simmons. I'd listened to
Okay.
that, and then I'm like, okay, I got to check out the special because I remember watching his last Netflix special, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So he's got a new one called Adam Sandler Love You, and I watched it. And my takeaway on it is first, obviously, you got to watch it. I think when it's all said and done, and we look back on Adam Sandler and his career, we're gonna realize like this guy was a
Like
truly like incredible talent, a genius, like brilliant.
Adam Sandler, not even in the same playing field as like Will Ferrell or any like you think?
I think it's so different, and I'll tell you why. Like, so the thing that like his talent in this special is on full display, and so I grew up, with all those guys, Sandler, Farley, and Farrell, and whatever. And Sandler, when he was on Saturday Night Live, what he, became kind of famous for was he would write these songs that he would perform, right? The Hanukkah song and like, these different like characters that he would do.
Yeah.
His special is like part like stand up, but then the thing that makes it fully special is when he breaks into these musical segments, and they're not even like long. They might be 40 seconds or like a minute and a half at most. And the musical ability that he has, the range of musical talent that he has a guitar, and he'll literally do a song in like he played maybe 7 different songs and they were like every genre, and he's like fucking on the guitar just like it's crazy and
Yeah.
so funny. And again, you come away from it and you're just like, wow, like who fucking knew that Adam Sandler can like go on the guitar and just like play this way, and then but like go back and forth between comedy and being serious and between
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
look back on his career and some of the movies he's been in. He's obviously done a lot of silly comedies, but he's also been able to play like serious roles too. So I just, man, I admire Adam Sandler. I just think like if the way he's brought all the people along with him in his movies, and like it's just the way people speak about him. He's one of those guys that and also by the way, he loves to play basketball. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you know that
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
him?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like he plays, no joke, 5 times a week in
Well, the
pickup
guy,
games.
I swear, man, the guy's known for basketball shorts. Like that's all he fucking wears. Like,
It's because like when he does a movie, like they make sure to like scout like a basketball court in the area, and that's what he does for exercise, just plays basketball. And so
yeah,
I don't know, man. I love Adam Sandler. Please do me the favor
I'll
of
watch
checking
it.
out that
I
special.
love Adam Sandler too. He's amazing. So, yeah, I'll go check it out. So we got to TV, we got your creators. Should we move on to book? You ready?
Book club, let's go.
Book club. Let's get into it. So the book that we're having conversation about today that we both read is The Law of Attraction by Esther and Jerry Hicks. Now, the reason I read it is because you were super excited about it. So just like at its core, why were you so excited about the book?
Um, well, look, I talked about Esther Abraham Hicks. I think it was 2 podcast episodes ago. And what happened was I was, I'm going through some transition point in my life, and, I'm on watching these videos, and all of a sudden I got like an Abraham Hicks video that
Yeah.
like spoke to me. Right. And I was like, this was very powerful. And then all of a sudden, the algo picks it up and it starts giving me a bunch of her clips. Did
Yep.
a little research. I'm like, who is this woman? Like, what is the deal? Found out that like she's really big on the law of attraction and that it's a book.
Yep.
And then I said, I better go buy this book. So I bought the book and found out kind of like the story of Abraham Hicks and kind of the backstory to it. But the question of what is your question? I'm sorry.
Why were you so excited? Like you
Yeah.
stopped what you were doing. You were like, "Yo, you got to read." Why were you so excited about the book?
I think I read a lot of books, and every once in a while, I will read a book that hits me at a moment in time that I need it, that speaks to my soul, and that kind of uncovers these fundamental truths that I feel, but that like I'm almost like not conscious of until somebody else kind of articulates it in a way that's so clear to me. And this was one of those books. I say this is one of those books, but I've never done this before. I read this book, and the moment I finished reading it, I started it over and
It's
started
crazy.
reading it again.
Yeah.
And, I have it right here in front of me, right? Law of Attraction. But
Yeah.
then after I read it and I finished the second one, then I bought like the next book, which is like Money in the Law of Attraction. um, and we'll get into why, but like it's just, I think the biggest part of it is talking about your thoughts and like how powerful your thoughts are. And once you're able to recognize how much of a factor your thoughts are on your experience, then it changes the way you live your life.
And on that, to that end, my sort of question off that is, you know, do you believe then that thoughts alone can truly influence reality? Like, do other factors play a bigger role in our lives, or is it purely what you think on a day to day and how your mind is, like, contributes to the outcomes of every single day? Or are there external like, what do you think?
I think that, well, look, I think the biggest premise in this book, or like one of the first things, is basically that whatever your thoughts are, positive or negative, that those attract corresponding experiences into your lives, right? And I think that we've been told throughout our lives, think positively, like be
Yeah.
positive, right? But nobody ever really told us why you
Why?
shouldn't, yeah, why you should always be thinking positive. And also this idea of that if you think positive thoughts, then you can attract positive circumstances. But at the same time, if you're thinking negative thoughts, those kind of counteract your positive thoughts. So like, you could have as many positive thoughts as you want. If you have negative thoughts, it's going to keep you in this same place. Now
So
the question of go
I'm
what do
super
you want?
no, but I sorry, I gotta cut you off. I'm super excited, and I feel like this is like a fucking like Gary moment for me. I'm very fucking excited about the fact that like how much thoughts play a role in your life, but then not even that, the external factors of like we all have negative people in our lives, right? Like whether
Yeah.
it's your parents, your and not it's not that for me, but whether it's your parents, your friends, your colleagues, I guarantee everyone has one, if not several,
Yeah.
negative people in their lives. And so with that, like I guess my question is if you have that, do you need to cut those negative people off? Can you live with negative people if you truly want, abundance and you're thinking and you want these things in life that only a certain amount of people amass, can you have external factors like that, in your life?
It's a great question, and it's honestly something that I am right now grappling with in a couple different ways. And I think the answer to it is it definitely helps to not have those negative people in your life, or and look, it's so complicated because a lot of times you have people that want the best for you, but what they believe is that they need to ground you in reality. You need to, like, have a reality check, right? You need to really like think about what is happening right now, even when bad things are happening. Like, let's be realistic. And this is a philosophy that is kind of built on you are purposely, intentionally not focusing on what is your current reality. You're focusing on what you want. You're
Yeah.
focusing on what you desire. And not only are you focusing on that, you have to focus deliberately on the feeling of what that would feel like, and good feelings. And anything that kind of goes against that is kind of detrimental and conflicts with what the philosophy is. And so there's that part of it, but then there's also a part within the book, about the art of allowing, and of like that you are not kind of going to be able to influence all these different people, right? You're not going to be able to force them to see what you're seeing or what you're feeling, right? Everybody's kind of got their own, to borrow a term from the book, their own emotional guidance system of what they kind of believe and what aligns with what they're all about. And so I think one part of it that I had to, that I'm still trying to navigate, is this idea of like, wow, I'm having this like awakening from this book of like it's speaking to me on so many different levels, and yet there are people in my life who I love and like I don't want out of my life, but who aren't really on that, aren't on that level. They're kind of speaking in ways and doing things that kind of contradict what I'm talking about. And you have to kind of allow that to be, right? You have to allow that to be while not letting it influence you. And so the practice, which is so hard because we're hardwired in
Yeah,
our
it's
like, in our lives to always think about, not let ourselves get to a place of like, wanting and desiring the things we want without having some, natural doubt and skepticism and like all these feelings that are natural feelings but that kind of go against what it is that we aspire to. And you have to be able to direct your thoughts against it. So I keep having these moments, and I know you are too, where it's like I'm now thinking more about my thoughts, and like a negative
yeah,
thought will creep in and I'll be like, oh man, but like I can't do it. And then I'll be like, wait a second. No, no, no. I can do it. I can do it. Like push that thought to the side.
yeah.
I can do it, and I will do it, and I know I will, and it'll be fine. And it's like it changes your whole perspective of how you go about your day.
I find though, for me, in getting into kind of like the next thing in terms of like vibrations, for example,
Yeah.
for me, if I spent my day, let's say, I'm on a retreat, whatever, I spend my day alone. There's no really external factors that can deter me from. I'm generally very positive. I generally feel like I'm the man. I generally like, positive self. Like, I know that I'm going to be in a good spot in the next year, in the next 2 years. Like, but I've been, without reading this book, I've been telling myself that for years. Like, it's kind of just been my complex. Like, I've always been confident and, I'm working on the arrogance part.
Yeah.
And, humility is such a big thing. And so, but with how many people we interact with every single day, be it online, be it in person, I just struggle with being able to hear someone and hear something and then not let it, because it just, the
Yeah.
external, it's so fucking hard.
It
That's the
affects
hardest thing
you.
for me is like the,
It affects you 100%. I mean, that's the hardest part for me too, because I believe so strongly in this, and yet I will have things that happen, the external stuff, and it will throw me off and it'll put me in a bad mood. And when you're in a bad mood, you know, it actually just kind of, you spiral into these negative feelings, and it can take you out for a day, it could take you out for a couple of days.
yeah.
Look, I think there's a couple of things that like to me stand out about this book and this whole philosophy. One is like getting super clear on what you want, right? There's this
How
one.
specific do you get though? In terms of
Well,
what you
okay.
want. When you say super clear, when we talked about it, you mean like you want freedom, you want abundance, you want, or do you mean like I want the number one podcast in personal development? How specific are you getting with what you want?
Well, super specific, and that's the hardest part because for me, Derek, I've always had a really hard time figuring out what it is I want. And
For
there's
sure.
a sentence in this book where it's begin by saying, I want to know what I want. And so every day I've
Yeah.
been trying to like repeat that to myself. I want to know what I want, right? Like, what do I actually want? Because once you know what you want and you can start getting clear on that, then you could start visualizing it. Then you could start this practice of kind of manifesting it without knowing what you want. This is where again, it
Mhm.
kind of got to me of like, they talk about this concept of knowing what you want is allowing you to prepave your life. Whereas if you don't, you're living by default, meaning that like if you don't take the time to establish what you want, then you're attracting by the influence of others or by the influence of your old habits, all sorts of things that you may or may not want. And so I have this habit, of waking up, and it's kind of like I'm going through my day and I have no kind of rhyme or reason to why I'm doing certain things. Like I have a checklist of certain things of that I want to do and what I want to get through. But I think like most people, they're just winging it through life, right? And they're kind of like
Yeah.
the victim of whatever random circumstances happen, right? But this there's a concept that they talk about that I really love called segment intending in the book. And
Yeah.
it's basically like the value of it is being able to pause many times during your day to say, this is what I want from this individual segment of my life experience. And like I want it and I expect it. And so you could kind of break up your day in all of these little moments, starting from like before you go to sleep. You could be like, what is it that I want out of my sleep? I want to wake up. I want to be energized. I want to have a great night's sleep. I want to, wake up and feel positive about my day. You wake up. What do I want, out of this
Are you
morning?
saying that out loud, or are you just thinking it?
I am sometimes saying it out loud, sometimes thinking it. But each individual kind of moment, even like before this podcast now, I'm thinking like, what is it that I want out of this segment, of us recording the podcast? I want to be entertaining. I want to be insightful. I want to put on a good show. I want to get better at the things that have been wanting to improve upon. And so when you do that and you're more deliberate in each moment of your day, I just think like it leads to better outcomes. It leads to overall feelings of happiness and all of the things that you don't want. You're not even thinking about those things because you have a much more intentional way of going about, things. But going back to the vibrational frequency stuff, I think like that's one of those things for like a non-believer. They hear it, it sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo stuff, right? But
Yeah.
like to me, as I kind of read more into it, it's basically this idea, and we were talking about this other kind of concept of your emotional guidance system. And it's really what it boils down to. It's like having to do with things that either align with what feels good to you. And then when there's resistance, that means it kind of doesn't align with your vibrational frequency, your emotional guidance system. And so a lot of it is like resistance is caused by focusing upon the lack of what is wanted.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, when you're allowing it, it's caused by focusing upon what is wanted. So, a big, big part of this book is just about taking all the negative stuff and just really deliberately putting it to the side.
And I
Because,
think
yeah, any
anyone who,
thoughts about that is going to bring that into your existence, whatever it is: doubt, skepticism, like
yeah,
fear, worry.
but anyone who's, skeptical around the vibrations and that concept that you just talked about, just look at, what do they say? When you're having a bad day, shit like just constantly spirals, right? Like,
Yeah.
you stub your toe and then you get stung by like, but anyone who knows that and just knows you're operating at a lower vibration, shit just keeps getting worse until you make that change, until you have that mental shift where it's like, you know what, that was only my morning, the afternoon's going to be better. And then it is like,
Mhm.
it's only so I think some people don't think about it and are naive to that, but at the end of the day, that's all you need to look at. Like if you can believe what you want to believe, but when you're having a bad day and you acknowledge that and you feel sorry for yourself and you continue to go down that spiral, it will just get worse. And that is a known fact. And so that alone, you know, shows me what I need to know around this concept as a whole.
It's about like stacking good feelings, right? It's just like,
It's momentum.
okay, I want to
It's
just
all
have
momentum.
continuous good feelings. And when you do that, then good things end up happening. And all of a sudden it has that momentum. I'll tell you one other thing, which is just like, I think another reason that it's resonated with me so much is like whenever I have been so clear in my mind about things, or whenever I have focused upon things that just like I'm thinking about constantly, those are the things that have happened. Those are the things that have actually kind of manifested, good and bad. And I'll give you an example of the bad because it's kind of been on my mind. But like I had something removed from my back like months ago, right? And it got infected
Oh
and
shit.
it hasn't been healing for months, and it's been
Yeah.
like this thing that's been kind of like ruining my life to some extent, and like constantly checking it and worrying about it and whatever. And then I'm reading this book and I realize like part of the reason I think it's not healing is because I'm so worried and concerned about it and I'm constantly looking at it and I'm constant whatever. And so in the last couple of like weeks, and I'm telling you, like it just was not healing. The last couple of weeks, I've been trying to just not even think about it. And
Yeah.
as I've not even thought about it, it's starting to heal. And like it's just, and then I started thinking deliberately about just like, it's going to be fine. It is going to heal. I'm going to be fine. And I can't wait to feel the feeling of, it's completely back and I'm just full go. And like, it's just, it's in my rear view mirror.
Review.
And it's literally like worked. And so ever since I started reading this and started doing all these things, i I felt this positive momentum that I can't like shake. Like I know it's real. It's just very powerful stuff.
Do you think that the law of attraction works through a placebo effect in the sense that, people think about positive outcomes and therefore act in ways that lead to them? Or what's your thoughts there?
I think the answer is kind of yes, but I
I
think
don't think it's black and white. I agree.
it's like a placebo effect is a powerful thing because if your mind
100%.
if your mind believes something to be true, then it has the power to make it true. And what I mean by that is like, I'll give you another example. I had a friend who, I hate to kind of speak on continuously on the health tip, but he had cancer, right? Testicular cancer, and he was a close friend of mine. And from the very start, he was so positive. It was almost like strange, like just like that he was going to get through it and like that it was going to be fine. And that, like, and he told me it spread to all of his other organs and all this stuff. It was like alarming. And yet he had such a positive outlook on it that, like, he got through it almost like
Amazing.
quickly.
Yeah.
And then I've been in the opposite scenario where I've been with people who are just like, that's it, I'm done. And guess
And just
what? Like
shut
they
down. Yeah.
were done. Like, yeah, they shut down. And so it just goes back to like your mind is so strong. Your mind can
It's
cure
is
you,
it's the most important thing. Your mind and your mindset is the one thing. If you can work on anything, if you can be aware of anything, it has to be the way you think.
And in every situation, there are positive and negative aspects. So, like, you know, my wife was kind of like telling me about her day the other day and like her teaching thing, and like she was upset about some stuff and she had some frustration, and I was kind of like, well, hearing her out, and then I'm like, well, what are like the positive parts of your job? And she started kind of like rattling them off of like, she's like independent and they let her do her own thing, and like she doesn't have to commute like she used to back in the day in the city. And as
Yeah.
we were talking about it, I'm not saying like I changed her mind or anything like that, but it just made me feel like, you know what? You can have like a completely different way of looking at any situation, right? You could,
100%.
if you're in that negative mind state, like, yeah,
It's
you're
energy
only going to
draining.
be looking, it's like confirmation bias. Like you're only going to be looking for the negative stuff. But if you're coming at it from this angle all the time of like positivity, and look, I know that's something where like people can have like this reaction to it of like, oh, it's like this like blind positivity, but you're doing it for the purpose of like, there's an intentionality behind it where you're trying to put yourself in the best position. And so for somebody
100%.
like me that's been going through a tough time and a transition point in my life and all these things, it's like I know the reality of my situation, but my focus is not to dwell on it and not to worry about it, not to stress about it, because I know that hasn't served me. So now I have this approach where I feel like it's working for me because I am focusing on the end goal of what I want. I'll say one last thing, which is like, I loved one part of the book where it's talking about you have to get clear on what you want, right? It's all about kind of what you desire. But if there's a negative feeling about how you're going to get to what you want, it's telling you like you don't have to worry about the how. Just focus on the
Yeah.
what it is you want, right? You'll get
100%. And it'll
it'll
happen.
work. The universe is going to figure out
Work its
how, right?
Yeah.
You if you have a good feeling associated with the how, then sure, go for it. But like for the most part, for me, I never know how. And I think a lot of people don't know how. And that's the part where all of a sudden they get discouraged and something's daunting to them about how they're actually going to get to where they want to be. This is telling you don't have to worry about that. Just get fucking really super crystal clear on what it is you want, what it is you desire, and then start visualizing it. And that is the practice. It's like that is how the universe, that's how you attract the things that you want to you in your life.
And I'll finish by saying once you align your thoughts, emotions, and we talked about vibrations with your desires, with what you want, you create the life you want, as it says in the book. So, following the practical steps of asking, believing, and receiving, anyone can manifest their dreams and create their reality and live a more fulfilling and joyful, happy life. I truly believe, and I've been saying this for years, like if you want something, you can achieve it. But the problem is always like, we're all so open ended. Most of us don't know what we want until it's too late. And but I truly believe that anyone can create their own reality. You create your own life if you put the time and energy into thinking about it. You will fucking conquer the world if you want to. So yeah, man,
I
it's
bet, yo,
powerful.
by the way, I've been seeing all these videos of people that are like Djokovic and like
My guy.
what's his name? McGregor and all of these world class athletes that like
Train the mental.
yeah, well, no, they fully believe in manifesting. They've manifested
Oh
all the
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are subscribers to the law of attraction. The one thing that we didn't talk about, which is like where people like, well, a lot of people will probably drop off, and like if they don't want to just be open and receptive to it, is Abraham Hicks and like how she became this speaker, which is basically like she's a channel for this
Spiritual
this
life.
spiritual like non-conscious or non-physical being. And that part of it, I'm just like, you just have to, you're either going to be a believer, you either have to be receptive to, it doesn't matter where it's coming from, if it's
And it's
truthful,
coming from a good, yeah,
and it's coming and it makes sense to you, then it doesn't really matter where it's coming from. But there is a part of it, just as
for
like a
sure.
fair warning, where you might be like, wait a second, what? This is how this is being communicated. That part we should have probably
when
mentioned off the
when
top.
I first started reading it too, I was like, "What has he got me into? Like, what is
Yeah.
this?" It starts with very heavy spiritual. Again, talking about the channel through her, and and then a little extra, like and then it gets into more of the actual what we just talked about. But yeah, I would say again, like, don't judge, just allow the book to take everything at face value, and then start to really dive into, hey, this is what they're teaching, this is what it means, this is what I'm learning, and go from there. But yeah, man, it's that is funny that we skipped over that. It's on it was more prominent towards the beginning, in my opinion, and then I kind of just like I let it be, and you know
Right. It's like you got to get through those that first 25, 30 pages of
that's what it is. Yeah,
backstory, and then it gets into the actual like message and like the laws of it and all of the kind of learnings behind it. And that's where all of the great stuff is. You want to know what the backstory is because it's important context. But just for people that are going to buy a book like this and that are open to it, just know that kind of be open minded about something like this, because there's so much valuable stuff that you could take away from it. And I know it's had a real profound impact on me and a lot of people that I've told about it, and love the law of attraction. My
yeah,
wife, by the way, thinks I'm fucking crazy.
no shit.
Yeah, because it's like again, like she's one of these people that never wants, like, don't tell me to read this thing, like she wants to kind of do it on her own. And like when I'm trying to tell her about something, I always, things get lost in translation. It's hard to relay, what somebody else is kind of teaching you, and
For
it makes
sure.
me kind of come off like I'm like preachy in some way. So she just thinks like, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid of some cult.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. But
Yeah. Well, no, man. I thought that was a good book club segment. The Law of Attraction, the basics of the teachings of Abraham, Esther, and Jerry Hicks. This book right here. You got
yes,
to
sir.
read it. Should we end with a dad and 20s thought?
Sure. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can go. And my 20s thought is essentially, I told you before, one of my boys just had a kid. I was over at a dinner the other day and they have young kids, and, they were talking about how they don't, I don't have time to watch a baseball game anymore. I can't do these things. And so it got me thinking, and my 20s thought is it when kids come, or at what age do you have to give up things like watching a baseball game, things like football Sundays, things like golfing, the things in our lives that as young men we like to do, and the degen stuff. And it seems like when other people come into your life, those are the things that you kind of have to give up. And so yeah, why is that, and when does that happen? That's my
Um, Look, it's funny. You definitely, there is a point in which you have to give that up. But what I will say is this, like, I am now at the point where my kids are into sports, and like I get to
Sure.
watch with them, and it's actually really special because now like I do fantasy with them. Obviously I coach their flag team. We were sitting and watching the 4 o'clock games together, me and my 9 year old and my 6 year old, and it was amazing. I loved it. But yeah, there was a point at which early on, a couple of years, like when I was in like the real like early, early childhood stages, where I longed for those days where I could be with my boys and just be sitting around and like getting high and gambling on all the games and fucking just like, doing whatever I wanted, no responsibilities. And then, yeah, it hits you kind of like a ton of bricks, but that's just the other stage of your life once you become a parent. So
Makes
I
sense.
feel you
Yeah.
on that one. Um,
What's your
my,
dad
my,
thought?
my quick dad thought is this. When you're a dad, right? You end up in a lot of conversations with other parents, right?
For
And
sure.
sometimes you're going to activities and you see somebody that you haven't seen and you're talking to them, whatever. Some of those conversations you want to be in, other conversations you don't, right? But the other day, I think I was at one of their, maybe it was a flag football game. And
Sure.
I was coming off the field and I saw a friend and I started talking to him, and I was with my 6 year old, and I'm having a conversation with this other dad, right? And about something I wanted to discuss. And my 6 year old was like, I want to go. And he started
Yeah, like
like pulling me,
yeah.
like, let's go, and he started getting impatient. And I was pulling him back. I was like, all right, hold on. Just like, give me a minute. And he's like, come on. Like, I'm so bored. Like, this is like, whatever. And I had a flashback, like in that moment of me being young and doing
And
the
doing
same
the
thing.
same
Like I
shit. Yeah.
remembered, yeah, when my mom and my dad used to have these conversations with like their friends, and I would just be standing there and I'd be like pulling my mom's arm, like, come on, like, let's go. Like, what are
Yeah.
we doing? Like, I had no patience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't really have a point except that I think you really, when you have kids, you relive a lot of your childhood experiences through them, you
I
know?
bet. I bet. Yeah. And the other point I'll make for you is that patience is something that comes with time.
Yes. Yes. Having kids, there'll never be a time where you learn more about patience, right? And like,
I bet.
and there are so many times where you catch yourself of like being impatient or being aggravated or frustrated, and being and like having to actually learn how to take that time, just be like, okay, like you're dealing with a kid, you are supposed to be the adult in the room, like, and so a lot of times my kids will have blow ups, right? Where now I've gotten to the point where I know I just have to I can't go right in and
Yeah,
talk to them when they're seeing red. I know I have to give them a moment to just cool down. Being a parent is all about patience, man. There's a big aspect of being patient when you're a parent that is key to parenting.
I get it, man. I get it. Yeah, no time soon, but we can have those conversations more plentiful when I'm there. But yeah, man, episode 27 in the books.
In the books,
Literally
baby.
talk books. Yo, till the next one. Good shit. Teapot. Out. Thank you for tuning into the Put On Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to follow us on social at